Hello, and welcome to the 6th Revolutionary Minute. This series from Quincy Historical Society, Quincy 400, and QATV honors the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution, recognizing events both significant and obscure here in Quincy, Massachusetts, and beyond. 250 years ago, on December 17, 1773, the day after Patriots dumped 46 tons of British East India Company tea into Boston Harbor, John Adams wrote about the event in a diary entry and in a letter to his friend James Warren. Adams at most played a very small advisory role in the tea crisis, but his comments help us understand how Patriots understood the action that they took. In his diary, Adams writes, "This is the most magnificent movement of all. There is a dignity, a majesty, a sublimity in this last effort of the Patriots that I greatly admire. The people should never rise without doing something to be remembered, something notable and striking." This is elevated language to describe something great and momentous. Adams continues, "The destruction of the tea is so bold, so daring, so firm, intrepid, and inflexible, and it must have so important consequences and so lasting that I can't but consider it an epoch in history." Adams obviously had his adrenaline pumping now that there had finally been action after weeks of tension. But he was also expressing Massachusetts Patriots' conviction that destruction of the tea was, in his words, absolutely and indispensably necessary, and their recognition that its destruction was what we'd call a game changer. Americans believed that the Tea Act, under which the tea ships were sent to the colonies, was designed to establish a number of precedents that would effectively end self-government in the colonies. They saw the perpetuation of the tea tax as the linchpin of the scheme. Because the tax would be collected not when the tea was sold to a customer, but when the tea was landed and entered at customs, it was imperative to prevent any tea from being offloaded from ships. Boston was on the spot. There were British troops and warships stationed at Castle Island. 3 tea ships had reached Griffin's Wharf, the first to arrive in any American port. While Patriots were keeping the tea from being offloaded, Royal Governor Thomas Hutchinson refused to let the ships depart with their cargo still aboard. As the stalemate continued, there were intermittent acts of vandalism. Patriot leaders worried about the possibility of serious violence. Crucially, as of December 17th, customs officers could legally seize the tea from the first arrived of the ships and sell it. Adams writes, "Then there was no other alternative but to destroy it or let it be landed. Landing the tea," he says, "would have been the final ruin of our constitution of government and of all American liberties." Adams not only sees the necessity of destroying the tea, he clearly admires the way in which it was done. It has dignity and majesty. It is firm, intrepid, and inflexible. He tells Warren, "The town of Boston was never more still and calm than it was last night. All things were conducted with great order, decency, and perfect submission to government." Adams emphasizes this last phrase, by which I think he refers to the way leaders and participants avoided violence and maintained decorum and discipline. But what of the lasting and so important consequences of which he speaks? Adams lists as possibilities a number of the measures Britain did eventually take: quartering troops upon us, annulling our charter, restraining our trade. Of course, all responsible patriots had to have realized that this action was qualitatively different from anything earlier, and that Britain would have to respond. At the mass meeting at Old South on December 16th, Josiah Quincy Jr., an ardent patriot, wanted to make sure everyone went forward with their eyes open. He declared, "Whoever supposes that shouts and hosannas will terminate the trials of the day entertains a childish fantasy. Let us weigh and consider before we advance, because action could bring on the most trying and terrible struggle this country ever saw." Yet even in this statement, there's a hint of exhilaration, as there also is when Quincy said at the same meeting, "To the God who rides on the whirlwind and directs the storm, I commit my country." The Patriots saw the destruction of the tea as absolutely necessary, no matter what the consequences. But did they also see something more? did they have a glimpse of the idea of separation? Adams speaks of the rising of the people who must do something notable and striking, and he says the destruction of the tea is an epoch in history. He is more direct when he writes to Warren. The die is cast. The people have passed the river and cut away the bridge. Thanks for watching. We hope you will join us for the next Revolutionary Minute.